This is John Rocha, and welcome to a very special interview here on the Outlaw Nation channel. I could not be more excited to welcome these two gentlemen to my channel to talk about this incredible new documentary that's out. It's called Robin's Wish. It's available right now. It's available on demand and digital on September 1st, 2020. Depending on when this interview drops, it could be available right now or coming up very, very soon. It tells the powerful, true story of actor/comedian Robin Williams' final days. For the first time, Robin's fight against a deadly neurodegenerative disorder, wow, I got that right the first time, known as Lewy Body Dementia, and it is shown in stunning detail. And the gentlemen joining me today are the writer and director of, co-writer rather, and director of this documentary, Tylor Norwood, and Rick Overton, actor, comedian, Emmy Award-winning writer extraordinaire. So I'm excited to welcome both of these gentlemen here to the Outlaw Nation. How are you?
We're doing very well, thanks.
Doing great. Thank you.
Fantastic. Tyler, I'm going to start with you because I just finished watching it this morning. You know, it's a tight hour and 16 minutes. It's a great watch, very informative, so much information, a great walk down memory lane for those of us who grew up with Robin Williams. I mean, I'm a Mork and Mindy fan. That's where I started out, and I don't mean the reruns. I mean the actual screenings back then. That's when I became a huge fan of Robin, and I've loved him ever since. And I read your, your statement about the film, how you had kind of ignored how he passed and didn't want to deal with it. So how did you come into this project and how to negotiate your feelings to direct this? Because Susan Schneider-Williams asked you to take this project on. What was that process like for you?
Yeah, exactly. So Susan reached out to me to do a film on Lewy Body Dementia that had nothing to do with Robin. She was just like, would you be interested in doing a science documentary? And like, frankly, I was like, no. And, you know, because they're really dry, they're really dense. You have to learn quite a bit. And I was like, you know, I just come off of something that was a much more emotional journey. And that's kind of what I like to focus on my energy on. I find it sustains me. And so when I said, you know, what's going to sustain you through the making of this film, Susan? Because I know it's not going to be dry science. Like, what's going to be the thing that you can hold on to that's going to get you like 2 years in before we're sitting in a theater watching this thing? And she goes, well, you know, there's these things that me and Robin went through. And I was like, would you share that? And so she shared some of those stories with me. And I was like, if that's the movie, if you're willing to go there and be brave and talk about those things that I've never heard as a big Robin Williams fan that totally reshape how you understand the end of his life, if that's the movie, I'm in. And she was like, okay. And so we started on that process and built and built and built until people like Rick got involved. And then we eventually got Sean Levy, the director of the Night at the Museum franchise. David E. Kelly comes in and everyone talking about this really unknown story that completely rewrites our hero, right? This amazing guy. It rewrites the end of his life in a way that you completely understand just how beautiful of a guy he was, and that there was no crazy, like, you know, darkness inside of him that took over his life at the end of, like, that was kind of what I thought as a fan. That's where my head was at.
I have to say, it was a very moving documentary for me. I suffer with depression, and so I have encountered those feelings in 2016. It was I almost took my own life. So hearing, watching the process and hearing them delineate the differences, I think is important to see the complexity of this. It wasn't just, you know, people defaulted, oh, depression took him. No, there was something way more sinister happening, way more insidious happening within the brain because of chemical reactions, this disease, what it was doing to him, the weird reactions it was having. It was so informative to finally have something to point to for when people, you know, do that like shorthand, oh, it was depression. No, it was this. So did you end up, as you were going along, there's this line at the, and I don't want to spoil too much, but there's a line at the end of the movie about, I want to help people not be afraid. Did you realize that you were kind of, you know, carrying out almost his last wish with this documentary?
Yeah, that was a part of the filmmaking process that actually developed organically. So again, like Susan came to me and said, hey, you know, I have this thing I want to do about science. And then we said, okay, well, like, what if it's about you and Robin and the things that you went through? And in the making of that film, there was things she even discovered that she hadn't known about what Robin was going through. So when we talked to friends who give first-hand accounts, she was getting new information. And then she even brought new information to the project because we were talking about some pretty heady stuff early on. I mean, it had only been 2 years since he passed. So she was still very much a widow dealing. So there was little places that she hadn't gone yet in the house even. And one of the places was his bedside table. And when she went in there, she found this book of his that was his AA book, where it's a very, very personal book to him. It's how he managed his depression. It's how he managed his sobriety, right? And so this was a book that he took very seriously. It was right next to his bed. He'd read it almost nightly. And she opened it looking for, like, you know, maybe he scribbled something in a margin, like just looking for some way to connect to him. The first page, that first blank page in every book, when you open it and there's that blank page, he'd written, "I want to help people be less afraid."
Yeah.
Just sort of like a prayer that he put out into the world. He didn't ever expect anyone to read that or understand or know it. But the idea that as fans, as people whose work touched our lives, that we can now have a window into not only what he wanted to do going forward in his life, but really maybe what he was doing the whole time was helping us all be a little less afraid. And then the idea that this film, you know, he never got a diagnosis of Lewy Body Dementia, which is a neurological disease that's deadly, right? Guaranteed death, no real treatments, definitely no cure.
Yeah.
So he was on this journey that he couldn't understand wasn't his fault. And the idea that at the end he didn't know and had some fear that was sort of consuming him. Right. This film can undo a lot of that. This film can give us all a window into being more compassionate, less afraid. I do think in a lot of ways it's something that carries on his spirit.
Absolutely. Rick, I go to you next. I mean, to be in this man's aura, this man's energy, you know, you're throughout the film. We have interviews with you and then scenes of you performing on stage with Robin. It must have been like a pinch yourself kind of moment, but also like, I don't even have time to do that. I got to keep up with this guy. What was it like to be around his energy all the time?
It's like Blue Angels, you know, with the precision wingtip flying, except you're given no flight plan in advance. And you have to stay wingtip with wherever the flight commander goes.
Right.
And so it's pretty exciting, you know, and you're measured by how well you keep up with them, basically. Yeah. That's, you know, that's as good as you could ever imaginably hope for. and we had a lot of great times doing it.
And you're no slouch in the performance department. You have a career that has spanned 4 decades, Rick. You are not, you know, you're a gentleman who's very much in demand. You work a lot. You're series regular, recurring characters, TV shows, movies. Was this one of the greatest challenges of your life, working with Robin Williams in improv?
I thought it might be when I first went into it, but another feeling takes over. For all your fears once you get into an improv, and it's I think the same place jazz musicians go when everything just clicks and they just make a brand new thing and they're not thinking about anything else. In that moment, you don't have time for the fear. You don't have time for anything except that's like swimming. You just have to keep going straight ahead. And it's for an adrenaline junkie, it's pretty much up on top.
Well, what's the process for you when this first came about, when you met Robin, when you started working with him? What was this did you just, I mean, do you have to put that stuff away and kind of communicate with him one-on-one as performer to performer? Am I correct on that? Did that help you kind of cement this friendship between the two of you?
Yeah, we bonded over Jonathan Winters, a mutual love of Jonathan Winters. Yes. That was one of our first things. And then Peter Sellers, like, we had parallel lines of everything we liked as kids.
Right.
Yeah.
What is the one thing about his humor that always attracted you? Because I think that the thing about him is the reason he's so universal is that anyone from any walk of life, from any country, from any culture can connect to something about his humor, his comedy, or his characters. What was it for you that, like a moth to a flame, kept you coming back to him?
His facility and speed and ability to shapeshift like he's an X-Man or something like that. It's all the things I loved about Jonathan.
Right. Yeah, his son, Jonathan. Yes, his son.
Yeah, you could many feel that's the case somehow. You know, Merc and Mork.
Yeah.
But that was through. Circumstance. I even got to work in a comedy special with Jonathan, and I got to bond with him too. And then through Robin, I got to do it, and through my friend Danny. And so it was a wonderful time all around. I'm grateful for every moment. I'm so grateful that the gratitude almost cushions the blow of him being gone.
Yeah.
Remembering what's great about him can go on forever.
Right. Before I go back to Tylor, I want to ask you one. I mean, you've been doing these interviews. You've been talking about him, you know, with numerous people like me and other people. What's it been like to kind of re-examine or re-explore these feelings again? Has it been almost cathartic for you, or has it been more of a painful times to remember the loss of him?
Yeah, I think you get the whole package sometimes. You know, it depends on what part of the memory you go to and what else is going on. But I'm saying most of the time it's gratitude.
Yeah.
And remembering, I can look back now with a new insight because of the film and the message. It's a brilliant and insightful and important film.
Absolutely.
This doesn't just go on to be about the entertainment world. This is our world. This is a much bigger thing we're coming to understand.
Yeah.
Very important. Great work. And so I'm just grateful for every great moment I had. Everything is finite, but what a great run.
Yeah, if you're gonna have a run,
what an amazing
this
run.
is the run to have, that's for sure.
Unbelievable.
Yeah, I'll take an Oscar, I'll take this, I'll take that, I'll be the iconic Disney character. Yeah, I mean, it's an incredible run to go on for sure. Oh, and I'll do some drama over here, you know. It's phenomenal.
His name lives on in tunnels and parks, and we're not done, you know.
Yeah, for sure. And Tylor, I mean, that's the thing. I now put it on my bucket list to make a pilgrimage to that Robin Williams tunnel. I had no idea it existed. So now I'm like, wherever it is, I'm going to go find it and drive through it and take a picture of myself in front of it.
Yeah.
What's your experience with Robin Williams? Tylor, when did you become a fan and in your life?
I mean, 5 years old, 6 years. I mean, you have Hook, you have like Jumanji, you have these movies that like, and then the thing, like, one of the things I think is really powerful about this movie is the idea that, you know, Robin Williams' superpower, like Rick was saying, was his mind, like just how fast he could be. But I think that was really a vehicle for his heart. Like the reason that this guy could do drama, he could get to you in a funny movie, but somehow take you to this place where all of a sudden you're deeply feeling something. As a 5-year-old kid, I'm like, oh my God, like this guy's like my dad. This guy's like, you know, it's like, I think the thing that made him really special was his heart, and then his superpower that delivered that to us was this incredible, fast, like blazing speed that he could turn things around with.
Right. I mean, that's the thing. When you talk to the USO lady later on in the film, when we see her and she speaks about how not only was he incredibly smart, and we see that throughout, but also he was incredibly open and vulnerable. And when he saw a soldier in pain who had, you know, had a little bit of a traumatic experience, sat with that soldier for an hour and a half and surrendered pieces of his life, surrendered, you know, private, intimate things that he encountered. And throughout the film, I like that you don't shy away from the fact that they did have, you know, Mort Saul talks about it, other comedians talk, he did have these moments where he questioned, you know, going forward or staying alive, or so certainly that was an element of it, but that wasn't what pushed. So walking that line must have been a very difficult path for you making this documentary.
Yes. I mean, that I think was the core thing that really fascinated me as a storyteller, right? Like, as you're looking at like what's a way an audience can fall into this and get into a world that's Robin Williams, but it also looks at something that maybe we all go through. And I think the thing for me that took me there was the idea of at the end of our lives, the way we respond to the greatest challenge is, I think, the thing that defines us, right? Has all the work you've done in your life prepared you for that moment where you make the right decision with a clear mind and an open heart, and you go forward. And I think that Robin displayed that all the way up to the end, that he had these moments of, I mean, so Lewy Body Dementia, like, it's terrifying.
Yeah.
Total delusions. As you said, depression is like the #2 symptom. So this is a guy who worked really hard to control his depression, right? He exercised, he was part of a program, you know, he did meditation, he did all these things to keep present for you and me, right? Like to keep making the work that gave us all so much joy. But then all of a sudden there's this other layer, there's this new amount of depression that comes in, and then they take away your ability to process, because that's what the disease does. So now you have extra depression and no way to process it. That for me is just the idea that he kept working, he kept being there for his friends, he volunteered to do a USO documentary voiceover like really close to the end, just because like he wanted to keep being there for the people he like loved and cared about and doing the right thing. I mean, that's for me where you go, I loved the guy in the movies, I loved the guy in Good Will Hunting, I loved the guy in Mrs. Doubtfire, but the real guy behind that was better. And that's the thing I walk away from this process feeling really grateful and actually kind of like energized by.
Yeah, Rick, it must have given you a whole new level of appreciation for the man and the performer Robin Williams was, because we all, as creative people, go through those questions of like, why am I doing this? What's the point? How could I mean, the natural, intrinsic nature of a performer is the self-doubt and the worry and the concern and do I, you know, all of this stuff. add on top of it Lewy body dementia, which can send you in spinning out into these deep recesses of your mind, exploring or indulging into that, it must give you a whole new level of appreciation that Robin was able to fight through that just to be able to be on a set and say lines and be funny and do his thing.
Well, watching yourself, your actual self, be cored away, with by one shovel at a time, and still holding on. What a spirit! What a powerful spirit that can shine through that.
Yeah.
And he did. He would take the time for people when we were walking around in San Francisco or something like that. Anybody would stop. He would. The day just got longer because he would speak with every single person in that group.
Right. Right.
Every single time.
Right. Yeah. There's a video, or there's a shot you have of him that you included, Tyler, of him jumping out of the limo to run over and sign an autograph. You know, those are those things that made Robin feel like he was ours, you know, as a, I don't know, it's weird. Most celebrities keep that distance, you know, but he was able to be one of these people that people felt like they knew him, like they could connect with him. So his passing, you know, was like a nuclear bomb for a lot of people. Certainly for me, I was super just sad about it for many, many weeks, because he brought so much humor to the world. And nowadays, humor is like gold nowadays with all we've got going on. So there must have been, for you, it must have been an interesting process to make sure you didn't make it a love letter to Robin, but made it more balanced in that way as a director, correct?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the weight of Robin Williams' spirit it wouldn't allow for that, right? Like, there's no room for being saccharine when this guy gave so much in so many different ways, right? Like, if he was just a comedian, if he was just an actor, I think you maybe could find a way to do that. But there's no way to deny how much he put out in all the different ways he shined for us, right? As a communication, as a way of saying, like, let's all be a little less afraid. Let's all take another step towards whatever it is we might have been afraid of otherwise, whether it's laughing at it or feeling deeply about it, right? Like in Good Will Hunting or some of his other amazing work that was on the serious side.
Right.
So yeah, that was a big thing for me, was making sure that we hung in there and told a story about Robin Williams that got to Robin. I mean, that actually became a process through making the film, that we were like, all right, is this Robin Williams or is this Robin? And anytime we could be talking about Robin and looking at Robin, that was always the place that we were like, that's where it all came from. That's the thing that people haven't gotten to see before. And the idea that, you know, people like Rick, his wife, his best friends, you know, colleagues of his who've never spoken out before, the idea that they all came out and were like, look, like, Robin Williams will live on forever. But Robin, his story's never been told in the way that we think it should be, especially as it relates to the end of his life, because it's completely misunderstood. Yeah. And I think your documentary goes a long way to correcting those misconceptions. And Sean Levy certainly revealing, which I think you guys should watch the documentary to see what Sean Levy reveals for the first time ever in the film about his experiences on that third night at the museum film with Robin and what was happening with Robin, you know. And so although it's extremely painful to watch that, I think your film serves as a lesson or as an educational tool for this kind of thing to be seen more. And sometimes, unfortunately, someone famous or of note has to pass from a disease to make it something that people want to pay attention to more. And sadly, in this case, it seems like the Lewy Body Dementia organizations and all that has popped up, you know, because it will get benefit from it for sure. How much did Susan have input on the documentary? Did she say to you, "I trust you to make what we need to make here. I'm gonna be hands off," or did she kind of guide a couple of instances just to make sure everything was presented in a more round way? Yeah. So I mean, one of the things, again, like, I was being a little obstinate in terms of, like, I don't want to do a science documentary. Sorry, Susan. And then she was like, all right, well, like, maybe I can, you know, we can work together on this. And I was like, no, that's not how I do it. And so she was like, okay. And so there was a few things as far as chronology, right? Like, cause the order of this thing from a science perspective is really important about what happened in what order. But in terms of telling the story, I was like, you know, Susan, I gotta be the lawyer, and you're the star witness, but you can't cross over to this side of the aisle. Right. And she gave me full faith and support in doing that. And I can't be thankful enough to her, because it's really only after making the film that I can go, God, like, what an impressive person she is. And it gave me so much like sense of what Robin saw in her, right? Like you go like, oh, of course Robin would marry this woman. She's like gorgeous. She's incredibly funny. She's super smart. And she's got such a good heart and a good spirit. Like you can just see how the two of them like hit it off so well. So that was one of the things that was really powerful for me to see. And I mean, I guess just as I think about this movie and what I hope an audience gets from it, I do think it takes you to some pretty heavy places. But I think at the end of the day, you come out of that and you really know Robin and you really have a deeper appreciation. And so in a lot of ways, I think you come out of it feeling pretty energized and pretty good about, wow, like he, you know, and I'm kind of hoping that as the credits start rolling, like people just like turn this off and turn on Miss Doubtfire or turn on Good Will Hunting or turn like, just go back and look at Robin. Cause like, it's just such a great time, I think, you know, with all the stuff that's going on or whatever, but just, you know, it's never a bad idea to go see what Robin has to offer from his incredible body of work that he put out.
Absolutely. I mean, in those films, I'm sure, Rick, you know that too. I mean, he guided us into some of these harder conversations to have about life in some of his dramatic roles and even in some of his comedic roles. I mean, Mrs. Doubtfire, yes, is a comedy, but it's also about a father missing his children, doing whatever he can to be around his children. Go to a Hunting's about a man dealing with the loss of his wife. Grief, ironically, the other way around here. So he seems to be the perfect vessel for people to open their eyes up about Lewy Body Dementia. I do want to ask you, Rick, do you have a favorite memory or maybe a favorite life lesson that Robin might have left you with that you kind of turn to for yourself now going forward?
Well, I think his life, and it's not the full sum total of his life, but if there was a way to put it to somebody, if you wanted to honor him by trying to be like him, it would be to be aggressively kind and courageously brilliant.
Oh, that's great. I love that. Aggressively kind and courageously brilliant. I think that's a perfect place to stop this interview. I thank you all so much for taking the time. Tylor, this comes out September 1st on demand and digital. It's called Robin's Wish. After they see this movie, after they watch their favorite Robin Williams scenes or favorite Robin Williams movie, what would you like them to do next or take forward with them from your film?
I think the most important thing is to really understand what happened to Robin, and that could have happened to anybody. It happens to 1.4 million people a year diagnosed with LBD. You know, Ted Turner has it. There's actually some pretty famous people. And the big thing is diagnosis. So I think one of the great things that can happen from this film is if they're a family member or someone who knows someone who might have LBD, that it's a lot easier to tell. And the other thing is if they want to get information about LBD, they can go to the film's website and our amazing consulting partners, the Lewy Body Dementia Association, the Michael J. Fox Foundation, Parkinson's Foundation, it just goes on and on in terms of the great groups who've gotten behind this film, because they want to make sure that people understand that neurological disease is a huge issue. It affects tens of millions of people a year. And I think the big thing is we can all be a little bit more compassionate when somebody's going through that, right? Whether you're a caregiver or a family member, the idea that this is something that's just as applicable as heart disease if something happens to your mind, and just to bring that same level of compassion that you would if it was cancer or something otherwise, that we understand better.
Well, there you go. Well, thank you so much to director and co-writer Tylor Norwood of this incredible film, Robin's Wish. Thank you to Rick Overton. I did not bring my dinner for Schmuck's beard that I bought, but I was going to wear that for you in honor of you. But I want to thank you both very much for taking the time to be here on the Outlaw Nation to talk about this great new documentary, Robin's Wish. Ladies and gentlemen, please go see this thing. It will absolutely change your mind about what happened with Robin Williams, will educate you, and perhaps might help someone you know down the future, in the future, who might be suffering from this. All right, take care, everybody. We'll talk to you next time on a brand new interview here on the Outlaw Nation.